And we are live. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Happy, what are we at? I think the 10th or the 11th date in Fish's Summer 2021 tour. I am Brian Brinkman once again here at Osiris Media. I'm really excited to be hanging with you all on Wednesday, August 11th to recap the Tuesday, August 10th show from Hershey. I have been to that venue once. I went back in 2010. Absolutely loved it. It was really fun to catch it on the stream last night. Big rainstorm, big rainbow before the show started. You got to see the Hershey Park Arena, obviously one of the most famous and biggest arenas in fish lore. The 12/1/95 show was took place there. You could see the roller coasters. It's just a ton of fun to see that place. It was awesome to see from afar the show last night. So we are going to bring on, we've got two awesome guests here today. Really excited to get into this show and kind of break down what happened last night. It feels like it was a show that there's kind of polar opposite feelings. Some people really loved it. Some people didn't like it so much. I have some thoughts, some opinions as well, as do our guests. Before we get started here, we are presented, HFPod on Tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. As you so well know right by now, but we're going to keep telling you because Shift Genuine Cannabis is such a fantastic partner for us. We are currently running a contest through the Saturday of the Dick's weekend with Shift Genuine Cannabis. Please visit shiftcannabis.com. You can register daily to win tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows in Las Vegas. In addition to the shows, you will have a hotel room provided as well as some money towards airfare. Anyone who registers qualifies for a penny joint at participating stores in Denver for Dick's weekend from Shift Genuine Cannabis. More information be found on shiftcannabis.com, but I encourage everyone to go ahead and register for it. It will be a ton of fun for you to win that. So moving to the show here, we are going to bring on our first guest. Our first guest is Nick Cantrell. He is the founder and owner of Green Future Wealth Management. It's a fantastic organization that we work with here at Osiris a lot, and they're a fantastic sponsor for us. But Nick is going to join us here in a second and break down the first night at Hershey, as well as kind of talk, where does this show fit in the larger tour? So without further ado, Nick, how are you, man?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You're looking really good for a Wednesday morning. How are you feeling today?
I feel great. I was going to be at the show and then I ended up canceling out on it, so I got to watch some of it with my kids, and then finished out the show watching it. So I'm looking a little bit spiffy today. I'd be a lot more haggard looking if I had been at the show.
I get it. And you know, it's interesting, like, for all the tumultuous ups and downs of the last year, the dinner and a movie series, being able to hang out with my kids, cook some dinner, turn the TV off and go right to bed. I was like, this is a really good way to experience fish right now. There's nothing like being there, but it's a really good addition to things.
Well, let's not get the actual 15-minute break instead of the joke 15-minute set break that they get all throughout 1.0. But I know, I was saying last night during set break, I was like, man, I get used to the 15-minute one during dinner and a movie. I wish we could bring that back.
I know, my wife would say, like, go and walk the dog, and I'd be like, no, we actually only have 15 minutes. Trey's not lying this time.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, so from the couch, how did the show look? How did it sound to you? What were kind of your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's fish, so I love it. So here was my thoughts on last night's show. Was I thought that it was actually a really good first set, but I think that we all tend to throw away the first set, and we're also focused on second set, and you know, how deep are they going to go? What's going to be the longest jam? What's going to be, you know, how many type 2 jams they're going to be in set 2, and we tend to just sort of kick the first set aside. I thought that it was a really good first set. I thought that the second set started pretty strong. I thought No Man was really strong. Believe it or not, I mean, Soul Planet is not my favorite tune, but I thought the No Man into Soul Planet was really cool. And I thought that the rest of that didn't really, care what those first couple tunes did. But I thought that set one was pretty strong. It had part of it was I'm a sucker because First Tube is actually my favorite show opener. So they started with my favorite show opener, and I didn't think it was, it wasn't the greatest First Tube, but it was, it was solid, and I really like it. It always brings me back to the Alpharetta from first night of Alpharetta from 18, which they did as one of the different movies, and I saw that show with my brother, and so I always think of that as the opener, and always think about Tony, passing, and so I love that they started with that, and I think Antelope is probably one of my favorite first set closers. So it's like they bookended it well. And, I thought that it was a solid first set. I would give the first set probably about a 7. But I think we're also sort of focused on the second set that a lot of people probably came out of the show let down. But I loved the first set, and I thought that the second set started off great. Obviously there was some ripcording and some things that, a lot of people were scratching their heads over Joy and some of the placement of some of the tunes there, but overall fun. I think a lot of people were beaten up on the show maybe a little bit more than I was, because I enjoyed that first set quite a bit.
Yeah, I share in pretty much all your sentiments. I loved the first set. I think First Tube, every time they open with First Tube, I get this sensation from it of like, wow, they should open with this way more often. Like, when was the last time, like I'm always like shocked when they open with it, and then you look it up and it has like a ton of representation as an opener, including at Hershey back in 2000. But it's like one of those songs that just like, I'm not ready for the intensity of that, in the moment. And it just like immediately takes the show up to 11. I thought Exila was a great follow-up there. And I really like, I enjoy Fuego being played in that slot. Fuego and Steam to me are two songs that they sound like they should be played in the second set. But if I'm being honest, sometimes they take away momentum in the second set. And I feel like in the first set, they add a little bit of darkness. That's cool. And the Fuego jam kind of aligned with some of these, first set jams that we've been getting. The Mike song from Deer Creek, the Stash from Deer Creek, the Sand from Deer Creek. You could go back through the tour. There's a number of moments where the band connects around improvisation in set one that I really like. And then I loved the last half of the first set. The Llama sounded like Trey had practiced it. He had a ton of energy. Death Don't Hurt Very Long. I was kind of waiting, in this challenging climate that we're in right now, where they actually going to play Death Don't Hurt Very Long, and they injected some humor and some animosity into it. My biggest thought though on set 2, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, like I'm right there with you. Like I will go back to the Nomen's and the Soul Planet. Those are the two songs I will re-listen to probably the most from the show. Sometimes I wonder, Fish plays a show like the Friday night show at Deer Creek, where they lock in on all this improvisation. It's just like a fully connected show. Sometimes I've got to imagine they just want to be a rock band and they just want to play they want to play songs. Like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that there's probably something to it. And I think, I was trying to listen last night for, what's really working well. And I think one of the things that was really working well last night is Trey's playing sounds good. I think he got a lot of practice in during COVID. I'm not a guitar player. I'm a terrible guitar player, but I'm a musician. I have a degree in music, and for the guitar players out there, his left hand is stronger than it's been in years, and that's probably just from he just practiced, and maybe he was doing some exercises and maybe doing some actual technique work, but it allowed him to do some things and sound really good on them. He sounded really good on Sugar Shack, which you have probably not been able to say that for a half a dozen years. Because I mean, it's been rough for a while. He sounded really good on some of the licks on NICU, and I think
Yes.
his left hand sounds stronger, and so I think he's probably realizing like, hey, some of these licks between the sections of songs, I'm really nailing them. They're really sounding good, and so I don't know. I think that he's probably when that is really gelling for him, he's probably just wanting to say, well, let's play this one. I want to play this lick. I want to play this lick. Because I agree, there wasn't a ton of deep jamming like we've seen this tour. I mean, this tour, has been really great from a jam standpoint. Really, really deep jams. And we've been really blessed with a lot of really great stuff here. But I agree with you. I think sometimes I just want to go out and play some tunes and sound good doing it, be a rock band. And I think that was probably one of the things that they were trying to accomplish last night.
Yeah, I'm on the same page, and I want to showcase a comment here from one of our listeners. Here's my thought about last night. You need to work the fire and get it going before you can melt the chocolate. Tonight is going to be nuts. I saw this. I generally agree with this. Thank you so much, Lindarama 65. I generally agree with this. So there were thoughts about this going around on Sunday night at Deer Creek when I think, and I'll admit to being a part of this, like there was a part in my mind following what happened on Friday that was like, wow, every show should have this deep 25-minute long jam where the band really explores some new sonic space and connects. And I wonder in a sense if, and maybe this wasn't intentional on the band's half, they just fell into it. And all this is obviously speculative, but I wonder if coming back, they knew that leaving 2017, 18, 19, and early 2020, their jamming was at a really high level. And that's not really something you could say about them when they came back in 09. They had 5 years off where they didn't totally know how they were going to sound. So if you think about 09, 10, and 11, those 3 years up until Dick's 2012, they're playing a lot of songs and really kind of refiguring out how do we present ourselves as a band? How do we incorporate improvisation when we're trying to nail our songs? I don't think that was as much of a concern here in this tour, which is why we got a lot of deep jams early in the tour. And I almost feel like we're seeing a transition since Friday night where now they want to really incorporate songs back into the repertoire while jams fit alongside of that. That's at least what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking at this point.
Well, and I think the numbers bear it out. I was looking at some of the stats, and I think the number was 148, although it might have been higher than that. But through 10 shows,
yes,
there have been more individual songs, more songs through 10 than ever before. And obviously, there's been a lot of 10 show runs, 10 show tours where you're 10 shows in and you've seen a lot. I think the previous 140, this was 148. So clearly, they're playing more songs than they ever have. And I think part of that is, none of us know exactly why that is. But it's definitely the case that you get a show like last night, and there's going to be a lot of songs in there. I think the good news of that is they're technically they're playing the songs well. The trade-off is you're not getting a 36-minute tweezer every night.
Yeah. And I mean, the cool thing is like, we know that they can do it. And I feel like we're probably, as this tour starts to move towards, its initial conclusion in Atlantic City, which I don't know if you've been seeing the pictures coming out of that venue being built on the beach. I mean, it looks just stunning. It's this gigantic stage right on the Atlantic Ocean. I think back to the 2012 run there in Atlantic City when they played Bader Field. They seemed to like playing that region of New Jersey and of the East Coast. And I've got to imagine, playing a lot of these songs, they're not really repeating songs. Like, there've been repeats, but they're not like there's no song in like a true 4, 5, 6 show rotation. We may be hearing like the foundation being set of, okay, these are the songs that we're playing really well right now. These are the songs we want to continue to debut, but here's also where we want to continue to explore unknown territory that, has worked out incredibly well for them thus far.
Well, for everybody who's going to Atlantic City and thinks that you dodged the Soul Planet bullet, I don't know. They crushed it. I don't think anybody's keeping a list of top soul planets, but maybe they'll pull it back out for you.
I did see one in 2018 at the Forum that it was a show that had a very similar set list to last night, where I was kind of like, I don't know if I would have played this song right now. I don't know if I would have played this song right now, but the Soul Planet was fantastic. It was like 18 minutes and had this great jam. So last night, it is like once you get into the jam segment, it is it kind of turns into this like the screaming through space line seems to really inform the band as they continue to explore the unknown. So you got that at least. Tell me kind of as where we're at in the tour right now. So we're, I believe, 10 shows in. What have been kind of your larger thoughts about the tour at this point in time, and kind of where did you see this show fall overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this show is probably in the bottom portion of shows of the tour for most folks. I think that that's fair. Not every show is going to be a total heater, although there were parts that I really enjoyed of it. I think it's been a great tour so far. I don't think we had any idea exactly how this was going to look, although most of us were pretty optimistic. But they hadn't had a ton of time to work together, and I know that they did some practice in Oklahoma at the Bach Center before they came on tour, but it was pretty limited. I think it started off, a little bit rough in that Arkansas show, but pretty soon after they were really firing on all cylinders. I think that's still the case. I think it's been a great tour so far. 10 shows in, some highs and some lows in there, but I think it's pretty exciting what they're able to do. They're playing a ton of songs. I know a lot of people are sort of wishing that they would play fewer songs, and I get that too, and get back to that. We let's call it 100 songs, and they're in a 5 or 6 show rotation for the most part, but that's just not the band right now. The band's at a 200 song rotation, and that's where they've been for a couple of years now. And I'm not sure who all in the band that's pretty important to. But I think it's pretty important to Trey, and I think that's probably the way that it's going to be going for a while. So I think it's a great tour so far. I think some of the jams have been really deep. You're getting a combination of some deep jams as well as a lot of songs that I think technically sound good. John Fish is just incredible, and the level he's playing, he just keeps getting better. It blows my mind. And I thought that Mike was. I thought Mike was really strong last night too, and was trying to push a lot of these songs into some pretty interesting territory. I don't know that all of them got there, but I thought that Mike was strong, and I always think that Fishman's just a freak of nature and is always strong. So.
Yeah, Fishman seems to be like, if you want to tell if a tour has been pretty strong, just like isolate John Fishman's drums. And his drumming right now reminds me a lot of how he played throughout the summer of 2003, when like, if you just listen to some of those jams, like, of course, Paige and Trey are locking up. Mike has, some really incredible moments from a melodic standpoint. Those 3 guys are killing it. But like, when you just listen to Fishman on those summer 03 jams, like he's the one pushing those jams forward, and he's the one coming up with a new fill and a new idea and like raising the intensity. And I feel like I've listened to The Simple from Deer Creek so many times. I can't even count it at this point in time since Friday night. And it's all Fishman. Like it's all Fishman just driving that jam forward. It's interesting. The songs and the amount of songs, like you go back to
You go.
sorry, I'm having a little bit of echo right now. I think we're good now. You go back to like 2018, they've debuted somewhere in the range of like 65 to 70 new songs in 3 years' time. And some of these songs have never fully worked their way into the rotation. So I think to your point, like we're probably going to continue hearing 240, 250 songs per tour because they just simply have to make sure like, does Cool Amber and Mercury work in this slot or does it work in this slot? But hey, we also, by the way, still got to play Tweezer, and it's a really interesting point for a band that's 40 years into their career.
Yeah, it's cool. I still think it's amazing, particularly that John is able to just remember all of these songs and to do it in a way that he is right now because even just listening to him last night, his ability to switch articulations between the jams, there was fluid first part of the second set, the fluid movement between the jam sections and him switching up the articulations so quickly and easily. I mean, he is the master at what he does.
That is very true. Well, let me ask you before I let you get back to whatever you're doing in that suit. You're looking great here midday on a Wednesday, I should say once again. We're hearing a lot of songs. What is, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but what is a song they have not yet played that you're hoping to hear this tour?
Oh, God, that's a good question. I would have to get a look at the list of not yet playeds to have it yet. I'm going to have to pass because I'm not in front of me. That's a good question, though.
It's all good. We've got one answer, which is Sloth from Joe Schooling, which I'm always gonna love to hear that. I was glad to get a rock and roll finally last night. I think I'm always gonna go with the most ridiculous answer, which is Harpua. I think every tour needs at least one. It's that moment that like everybody can celebrate. So we'll see.
Yeah, I suppose I'll put out there. All Things Reconsidered, which hasn't been played in about 25 years. but I think Trey's technical playing, I think, is the best it's been in about a decade. So it's conceivable there, and I'm an NPR junkie, so I'd love to hear it too. But I think it's what 24 years, 27 years, something. So we'll see.
It's been a while, but I would love to hear the return to that. We're getting some great answers from the listeners. I'll just run through them quickly. Sloth, Coyote, Esther, Fast Enough for You, Vultures, Sea of Stars. I can't believe we haven't heard that yet this tour. Sense and Subtle Sounds, Cities, Camel Walk. I mean, these are all great answers, and these will all be great songs to add to the rotation. So, Fish, if you're out there listening, we are putting out future rotational songs here for you guys. Well, Nick, I want to thank you once again for first and foremost, all that you do here for Osiris. As I announced at the top of the show, Nick is the founder and owner of Green Future Wealth Management. Their ads are all over our podcast, so check them out. Really, really amazing stuff that you do. And I want to thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun. And can't wait to see what the rest of the tour is like.
Likewise, man. We'll be watching it from afar, and I guess my first shows are at Dick's, so I'll be able to have like perspective on the tour at that point in time.
Sounds good, man.
All right, man. We'll talk here soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick Cantrell, for hanging with us. That was awesome. Really quickly, before we bring on our second guest here for the show, I just want to remind everyone, HFPod on Tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Please go to shiftcannabis.com. You can enter once a day up until Saturday of Dick's for our contest that we're running with Shift. Winner gets tickets to October 30th and 31st in Las Vegas, plus hotel, plus some money towards airfare. Really awesome contest. Shift Genuine Cannabis is a fantastic partner here at Osiris. We're so thankful that they brought back HFPod and helped us here at this point in time. This has been awesome to work with them. And I'm going to Before we bring on our next guest, I'm going to channel the CEO here at Osiris Media for the excitement for Mr. Drew Hits. Drew, how are you?
Was I supposed to wear a tie?
You were supposed to wear a cassock. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. I apologize for my lighting. I'm at my sister's, and I could have had really good lighting upstairs with like probably good internet, but I decided to just park it in the basement next to the router. So
I think whatever shadows are on your face is probably all for the best. So we're
yeah.
good.
the more the better.
So you saw I don't know how to put this. You saw probably the best Son of a Mule that we've heard in 25 years. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that before we get started here.
I'm actually I might be the least qualified person to comment on last night's Son of a Mule, who was actually there, because I did not listen to it. So I have a very adversarial relationship with that song. And yeah, I was a couple of one of my friends was the first time that he had ever seen a show with me, and he actually got to see my reaction when they started Son of a Mule, which also at that point, yeah. So that was that's not my favorite song. So
yeah, it was when they started playing it, when they started playing it midway through the second set, I thought of you immediately. I was getting messages from our buddy Josh Carver, who was at the show as well, and we had a good exchange. I thought like they did a really good job of incorporating the new effects from Trey and from Paige within the Mule Duel part that actually made some fun sonic experimentation. But I think that's the most we can say about it.
And truth be told, my phone was blowing up, both text and Twitter, with people making fun of me for being there for it, and that was more entertaining to me in the moment than the song was. So, yeah, and then the set went from there. So, but anyway, how are you, Brian?
I'm great, Drew. It's really great to talk with you. For all of our listeners out here, if you've listened to Undermine season 1, you've heard Drew. He was featured prominently on episode 4, and we had so much demand around it that we decided to bring him back for Undermine season 2. So you'll hear Drew scattered across Undermine season 2 when that comes back on in early September. But Drew, this was your second or third show of the tour?
This was my third. I saw the 2 Nashville, and then I'm here for the 2 Hershey, and that's it.
Well, I want to get your thoughts, just you were one of my favorite people to talk about Phish with. And when we talked a couple of months ago, just kind of in anticipation for Phish Tour coming back, I remember you just talking about the kind of simple joy that comes out of walking into a Phish show and the excitement that you get and how it's unlike anything else. And I just want to get your thoughts on what was it like for you when you walked in to the Nashville show, even before the band played a note. Like, how did it feel for you?
Yeah, it was really special. It was really special. It was emotional. The first concert that I saw, post all of this, I mean, I'd played a couple of gigs, but like the first time I was an audience member was at Tanglewood to see the Boston Symphony about a month ago. Yeah. And that one, I teared up like walking in the front gate. And it was similar to this Nashville show. It was just like, just being there, being, with Don Hart and his wife, Kathy, who are both dear friends, and just, people who I hadn't seen in a couple of years now because of all of this, all of this mess. And, just, I love, Phish shows in particular, where just everybody's focused, it's all scattered. And then just as soon as the band starts, it just, it just locks in. And I was lucky enough to be in really good seats for both nights of Nashville. I sat with Don, and that first night in particular, my very good friend Colleen Heller-Stein, who's a former I just fired her. Who's a fellow Mockingbird board director with me. So I was like, no, she's not former. Anyway, it's like that's news to the rest of the board. Yeah, exactly. It's a classy way to let her go. No, she has been seeing Fish since 1999. She was sitting with Don and Kathy and myself, and she had never been that close before. And so just like seeing her reaction to it was just like, I mean, she was just exuding joy, which I was already feeling. And so it was like, it was all, it was all very overwhelming. It was great, very special.
Yeah, so my first shows back are going to be the Dick's weekend, and I just like that feeling that you talk about of like all this energy, all this joy, and then the band comes on and you just lock in. I'm so excited about that. What were your thoughts, kind of on a musical standpoint, as you looked at both Nashville shows? Did you have any highlights?
Yeah, the second set of the second night of Nashville was spectacular. Yeah, it was. It was everything that I look for in a set.
Yeah,
The Mister Completely was good. It was like, it's funny. The Mister Completely was not one of the highlights of the set. It was very good. But it set the table, and then the Birds of a Feather was also good, but then it got the Ghost Gin, also Sprock Melt stretch to close that set was just spectacular. It was incredible. And the Mr. Completely drum beat Fishman brought back in Ghost and in Bathtub Gin. The segue into Bathtub Gin is one of the slickest things I've ever seen them play. Not for 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever you call this, like just like period. It was incredible. And the melt was very exploratory. And even the Bathtub Gin, a great example of how creatively synced they've been so early in this tour is that that Bathtub Gin that came out of Ghost, it started real weird and it was a little dark, and then it was in its usual key of C major, but then Page sprinkled in some of the stuff that he did on top, he did in in a minor key, so it was like this kind of like evil Bathtub Gin. And then Character Zero, which encored, which is not my favorite Fish song, just because it tends to be the same every time, and it's just not my favorite flavor of ice cream, and it's always the same one. That one, Trey's solo from the very first measure was
totally.
like dissonant and creative and
Yeah.
weird, and like I enjoyed the hell out of it. So it was clear that like the entire second set, and the Mr. Completely and the Birds were good, but like it was just like it was like a runaway freight train after that, with segues and creativity and like layering of tunes. And that was really special. And that venue is just incredible. The sound is like pristine, and it's right in the city. You just like walk like a block away and you're not at a Fish show, which I love.
Right.
You just kind of like a similar, it's like MSG really,
Yeah.
it's like, although that's with like 20,000 people, but New York obviously just swallows up the scene. So it was really, really special. And I got to see the show. I posted a photo of myself from Red Rocks in '96, and we had a big crew that year, but there was like 5 of us in this picture out of like the 13 we camped with, and like 4 of the 5 of us from that photo were in Nashville. So there were a lot of people that came in for that show. It just kind of worked out for a lot of my friends' schedules, because we're pretty much all married and have kids and have jobs. I don't have a job because they don't sound like fun, but I don't have a real job, at least. But it's like there's a lot of complicating factors, and we all got to be together, which was really fun.
Yeah. The reunion aspect of it, I've got a bunch of close friends who are coming out here for the Dick's week, and it's going to be the same experience you're talking about. I've maybe seen, 1 or 2 of them, over the last 18 to 24 months. But really, like, as a whole, we've never all really gotten together, and so much of it has been through this computer screen. So to have them all here, seeing the shows, have that celebration, like it's something that if we're making the right decisions right now, if you will, we should be able to do, and we should be able to embrace that sort of reunion aspect together. Musically speaking, I'm on the exact same page with you on set 2 at Nashville Night 2. It reminded me in some ways of the 2018 run. The first night had the second set that went Mike's, Ghost, Set Your Soul Free, and something else I'm blanking on right now, but it was a really great second set that just flowed really well to get together. Everything was really creative. I feel like the mics went into a jam without going into the second jam, if you will.
Correct. Correct.
The Ghost.
Yeah,
It's always good when
right.
you say
Set Your
correct.
Soul Free, Circus, Weekapog. So that was a really fun set.
Yeah, and it kind of reminded me of that in the sense that like the Ghost and the Gin both felt like jams that on their own could have been 20 or 25 minutes. But when you kind of mash Gin into Ghost, you hear like the edges of the Ghost jam bleeding into Gin, and suddenly Gin incorporates those sounds and becomes its own jam. And then Split Open and Melt has been so creative over the last, I mean, all of 3.0, they've kind of like poked and prodded at the edges of the song, but really in the last couple of years, starting with, I want to say 2017, they really locked into some fantastic jams around that song.
Yeah, they've reinvented it. I mean, what they used to do with Split Open and Melt is a gear that the band doesn't collectively have anymore, which they also don't have in Antelope. They also don't have in Bowie. They don't, they just don't have it, which is fine. The 2004 Pedro Martinez was the ace of a World Series winning team, and he was an incredible pitcher. But if he had tried to pitch the same way that he did in 1999 or 2000, his ERA wouldn't have been 6, but it would have been like 4.5, like just because he did not have a fastball that defied physics in the last like 20% of its way to the hitter, so which it did, like in 99, 2000. So they've reinvented, which I think is cool. And I would sell my soul to see 1994, Melt again. But I really like what they're doing with it now.
Yeah, it's very creative. And what the analogy you're making in terms of like kind of an athlete making adjustments as they age and as they move through their career, I feel like is very apt to where Phish has been for the last 4 or 5 years. You posted a really great thread a couple of days ago just with regards to tempo. It's been a topic amongst us non-musicologists of the band playing slower. It was good to get an actually intelligent, musically minded person speaking on the subject. But, I'm curious, like the band came out this tour, and Arkansas aside, I feel like Arkansas is one of those shows that will forever, like Hampton 09, like MSG 2002, will forever just be in a bubble on its own of like, you have to play the first show back. And there's a lot of weird emotions, and there's a lot of inconsistency and hesitation. And I thought, the fact that they played as simple as great as they did, that they did that really cool Runaway Jim mashup, the Fuego, that it was enough of a signs of like where the band was coming from. Alabama through that first night at Deer Creek, the band was just completely on fire. And I would even in some cases put parts of the second night at Deer Creek on there. The last couple of shows have shown some conflict within the fan base around, is this a good show? Was this too rough? Was this connected? Is this the band we want to hear? Is this just the way that they're playing? What are your thoughts coming out of that Nashville show and going into last night at Hershey? What have you heard from a development standpoint in terms of where the band is, and is age playing a factor in any sort of way?
Well, I mean, I can say from experience. I mean, I used to travel around the world playing 100 gigs a year. And it doesn't matter how nice your hotel rooms are. It doesn't matter how well, it doesn't matter if you have a nutritionist backstage who's like taking care of you and you have a masseuse, and it's like there's just there are nights when your energy is just not where it is other nights. And there's like literally nothing you can do about that. It's just kind of the ebb and flow of, if you have a 9 to 5 job, I'm just assuming that, it's like you don't feel equally, energized every Monday through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday,
Totally.
no matter whether you go to bed at the right time and that you have a good breakfast. There are certain things you can do to increase the chances. And I'm not telling you that any of them, because I have not had any conversations with any of them this tour at all, that that any of them were low energy for any of the any specific show, for sure. I'm not saying that, but when you tour for a couple of weeks, it's hard. It's hard when you do that for and I did that for 14 years, and it was like amazing, and it was like a magical way to see the world and to earn a living, and it was great. But it wears you down after a while. Now they seem very energized collectively. They seem very happy to be making music together. But I think that there are certain nights when certainly the hardest parts in the band from all the old tunes are Trey's parts, I think, arguably. And I think he's the one who, when someone's struggling, he struggles the most visibly, because his parts are out in the open. And there are certainly some nights when he operates the guitar at a higher level than other nights in terms of the composed sections, and that's not because he's trying harder on some nights and less hard on other nights, or that he was up until 4 a.m. for no reason. It's like I doubt that there's any correlation there. There's just some times when it just doesn't really hit. And I think some of those nights are the nights when, last night's second set is a great example where, for me, I don't tend to prefer the sets that have lots of songs. Yeah. Now that's also, I also don't think that longer is better, like, period. Right. Like you were just talking about the Ghost and about the, there's an awesome campaign for that Mockingbird Foundation, if you don't mind the obnoxious plug here, that I don't even remember who did it, but people have pledged, like, I think we're up to, I don't know what the latest number is, like a few $100 every time Phish plays a 20-minute jam. People, the people that have pledged for this are donating $20, which is really cool. Which if you can't easily find it, just like tweet at me at DrewFish and I can get you a link. But neither one of those jams made it to 20 minutes. But like that Ghost and then that Bathtub Gin interrupting, I'm sure some Ghost fans thought it was ripcorded, which I couldn't think is further from the truth. But then like they kind of combined and, like that was spectacularly creative, even though both of them were like more like 15 minutes rather than 30 minutes like the Tweezer was, or, from Alpharetta or whatever. And so longer is not better, but in general, when it's, jukebox Phish, when it's just like song after song after song, those tend to, for me, be the shows that have the least flow to them, and then on top of that have like there tends to not be as much creatively going on within the songs for my taste. It just kind of tends to be a little bit more just straightforward. There's just not a lot of like really interesting side conversations happening between, band members, or in unexpected places, or, weird grooves happen, just kind of anomalies, if you will, which is one of the things that I look for. The Sunday night in Deer Creek, those I have found, this was true also back in the day, although, so they used to play a lot more shows, and they also used to do a lot more segues. Like segues were like a regular thing at one point, like if you're talking like 93, 94, even into 95, although there was less by 95. And so they had a lot more practice. They had a lot more reps. It was a lot more active reps. And if you're a writer and you don't write that much, it's like it doesn't come as naturally to you as, you kind of, who was there was a famous British playwright who once said that he that he only wrote when said Maugham said like only he said I only write when I'm inspired, but luckily I get inspired every morning at exactly 9 a.m. It's like, so, which is a great quote, right? Where it's like you get better at hosting podcasts by hosting podcasts. And so the segue thing can tend to be, is a little bit more rusty now. I love it when they do it because the band always has a blast when those shows happen. The audience pretty much always has a blast when those happen. Although I personally find, now I wasn't at any of these, but like the Zeppelin show from Atlantic City the night before Halloween, whichever year that was, like I don't revisit that. I'm a Zeppelin like fanatic. It's like really sloppy. It's like really, really, really sloppy. And so those are the shows that tend to, and if you were there and that was your favorite show, please don't empower me with like threatening your opinion. Your opinion is your opinion. It's
100%.
correct. So is mine. Like, yeah. But so, and I think Sunday is one of those.
Mine
where
is
like,
wrong, but yours is right. So
yeah.
That's how we work.
I mean, if I know enough about Brian that many of his are wrong. But no, sorry, I thought I was talking to RJ. I'm just kidding. But it's like, it's one of those things where those can be more fun in the moment than they are, like on tape, just a recording or even on a webcast. It's interesting how there's now like yet a different way to experience it. So that's a show that I'm not going to be revisiting. Nashville night 1, not going to be revisiting much at all.
Right.
Nashville first set of night 2, not going to be revisiting that much. Last night, not going to be revisiting that much. But that's okay. That's okay. There was still last night. Gumbo was a great example of how creative they are being right now at times.
Totally.
The tempo for Gumbo was really slow, and Gumbo is not in any way technically difficult at all. Like, it's like they did not slow that down. Like they played Sugar Shack really slowly last night because that's like Trey's white whale, and it helped him to play it better, right? The Gumbo, they slowed down. That was a purely aesthetic decision. Like that, there's no benefit to playing Gumbo slower. There's nothing technically difficult. The combination of them playing it slower, it got a really different feel. It was like a much like kind of heavier, like swampy type feel to the groove. And then Trey randomly like started singing his lyrics like an octave higher, which was also just kind of like, me and one of my, he's a band director, Mike Jacobitz, who was next to me. He looked at it like, what the hell's he doing? Like in a good way, it was like, that was an example, and that Gumbo really felt like it had a little extra something, because the groove was so different, and the groove is, to me, when they change tunes like that in that kind of way, my favorite artist by far is Monet. I retweet a lot of Monet paintings on Twitter. If you're lucky enough to be in front of one and you actually get to spend a little time there, like if you just like move, change your angle just a little bit, like just look at it from 15 degrees from the side rather than straight on, it's amazing how the painting changes. I mean, there's like certain colors that change and textures that change. It's like, and then you go even further over and we're almost looking directly at, it's like, it's the same painting, but it's really a different perspective, no matter how many times you've seen that print, on a screen or on a page, or how many times you've been in that museum. And that's kind of like what they did with Gumbo, with changing the tempo, which then changed the groove, which then I would be willing to bet a lot of money that they did not rehearse Gumbo, between the last one and this one, backstage, not sound check, so we couldn't heard it, and then discussed that they were going to play it slower and that they were going to change the groove, and that that just happened, that just happened. And I really love that kind of stuff. That shows that I think that the band is in a really good place creatively. Where last night's show, for me, just kind of, I don't actually think that my tweets have anything to do with what the band plays or how they play it, to be super clear. But I did after Soul Planet, which is also not my favorite Fish song. Although I do think, what was it? Was it New Year's 20? So what was the Soul Planet year? 2017. The
Well,
one
it
that went
debuted on New
for,
Year's 2017, but then it came back. I think we all thought, okay, it was a one-off New Year's thing, and then it came back in 2018, and there were some good versions, but it was definitely like,
it was but the New Year's bit was the one that was like 20 minutes long. Yeah,
yes.
my joke is that every Soul Planet is actually just a continuation of that one, actually, because that thing just kept going on.
We're still living in a Soul Planet,
and we are still living in a Soul Planet. But I tweeted after that, is like, if they can get that dark and that glorious within Soul Planet, it literally doesn't matter what they play. And then they proceeded to play like 6 of my least favorite Fish songs, like
in the middle of the second set,
almost in a row. Yeah. So which was funny. But Soul Planet was a great example too, though, of like, boy, did that get creative. Like when people are comparing last night to, Charleston 3 or to Grand Prairie, they're ignoring the fact that the first 30 minutes of that second set was banging. Like that No Man's Land was really good, and the Soul Planet covered a lot of ground. Like that's really, really great 30 minutes of Fish.
Well, it reminded me of a show I saw a few years back, the second night at the Man in 2016, June 29th, 2016, which had a really entertaining first set, with great song selection, a really cool Mike's groove, and it felt really high energy at set break. There was a great Reba in there. It was just like one of those sets that, like, and I feel this way about the first set last night. I don't know if I'd ever like go back and actively be like, I have to re-listen to that first set. But if I kind of stumbled upon it and threw it on as I'm like cooking dinner or hanging out with friends, it's going to have moments like that Gumbo, like the Fuego, like the Death Don't Hurt Very Long, where I'm going to be like, my ears are going to perk up and I'm like, wow, this sounds really good. And then they come out for the second set and they play this really cool No Man and No Man's Land that had these shoegaze elements to it. At one point, my close buddy and podcast partner, Dave Goldstein, texted that it sounded like they were playing Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles, which is always a really cool, space for them to get into. Same sort of vibe with Soul Planet. I was kind of like, I could keep going for No Man and No Man's Land here, but if you're going to jam this, that's cool. And if you look at that 6/29/16 show I'm referencing, there's a really good Cross-Eyed, there's a really good Down with Disease, there's a great What's the Use, but then the fourth quarter of that show has like Tide Turns, Numberline, I'm blanking on what there was like a Dem Bones in there. It was just like, it was one kind of slow ballad that we didn't necessarily, I personally didn't want to hear in that part of the set. And if you look at this set list last night, you go out of Soul Planet and NICU, Joy,
and that segue into NICU was spectacular. It was really
fantastic. Good. And it was kind of like when, like they did a few years ago at Dick's, they did Disease and NICU, and it was a great segue middle of the second set. But Joy, Son of a Mule, Golden Age, Caspian, Numberline, The Lizards, and Character Zero. And it was one of those shows that they start really well. They start really strong. Then they start the second set really strong. And then I don't totally know what happened after that. And my biggest conclusion is some nights they just want to be a rock band. And some nights they just want to like showcase some of their songs and get that sensation of standing up on stage, playing songs in front of an audience. And for me, like the moment I enjoyed the most was The Lizards, which I believe was the first time they've played it since they came back. And is one of those songs, all the work I did on Undermine in season 1 and all of our conversations about like the composed parts of You Enjoy Myself and Foam and Divided Sky. When I hear a song like Lizards now, I hear Fish in their origins and like the great moments of improvisation that we get now. What makes Fish so remarkable is that they were writing those moments into songs 30, 40 years ago. And that final moment of The Lizards is like, that is a jam composed, if you will. and that is Fish like completely connected. So that was for me, like just trying to step back and be like, okay, they're definitely not going to reach levels of what they reached on Friday, but they're just enjoying being up on stage as a rock band. And maybe that's in some ways what they need to get back to that next Deer Creek one. I don't know. Perhaps they do.
Yeah, for me, it was, when the segue into NICU was great, but then I need that was, I think, the defining moment of the set is like right after that. It's like, where does this go? And then, I'm big into flow. When I was, all the years I was in Boston Brass, we used to craft set lists where, and we would change things up a little bit, but we would tend to have a set list for for a season, and would sell, there'd be a theme to it, etc. Which is much more of a classical thing than we do not have 800 songs. That would not have gone well. So, and there's also anyway, but we would always try to, it's like a great meal. You have to think through the flow of things. And there are some nights when Fish absolutely nails it. It's not just the courses, but it's the timing, it's the order of the courses. It's all of that. And then there are other, the joy in that spot, any ballad like that in that spot coming off of NICU, it just kind of felt like, I don't know. It felt like even if the meal's going well, that suddenly in between, your 4-course meal, there was just 20 minutes between when you finished course 2 and when course 3 started, and you're just kind of do we finish the bottle of wine? Cause we want that with the next course, but we're just sitting here and it's just kind of the flow is just it's just not quite there. And that's actually why I dislike Scent of a Mule so much is because I saw it 9,000 times back in the day, and that they always played it in the middle of the second set. But it's just that it's long, and it tends to for my taste, it tends to kill the flow of sets, just because it's and it's I think it does exactly what it attempts to do, but it's just kind of there's just a screeching halt to any kind of there sure as hell ain't no Ghost bleeding into bathtub gin, which then bleeding into Mr. Completely, it's just it stops all of that. And so then the Mule, and then Golden Age I love. It's one of my favorite Fish covers. And then they bailed almost instantaneously for Prince Caspian
when they had something good going.
Yes, when they had something good going, which is another song that I'm known for not being. Yeah, I mean, my main two nemesises. I don't know what the. I dropped out of 2 master's degrees, so I didn't get there. But but yeah, Caspian and Mule, and then the Caspian, the jam that comes out of Caspian these days is usually pretty damn good, especially when it stops sounding like Caspian. And then they skipped that part. They didn't even get to the good part of Caspian. And then they dropped into Numberline, and then the Numberline in Nashville was really good. It
Very
was
inspired.
It was, yeah. And I actually like that song, although I never really want to hear it live. It's just there are a number of Fish songs that I really like that I don't ever want to see live for various reasons. And and large part is because there's so many other songs they could be playing at any given time, and what it historically does to the flow and where it happens. And the Nashville one was really Trey really kind of seemed to be extra happy to be on planet Earth at that moment with all of those people and with all of us, and it was great. Last night's was not that.
Mm-hmm.
and then the Lizards was really good, and then Character Zero, which was just a paint by numbers short Character Zero, which really didn't do anything. So it was also so it's not only for me a bunch of songs I don't like, but with the exception of Soul Planet, it wasn't even remotely good or creative or anything out of the ordinary. Gumbo, right? Slower tempo, random, singing up an octave. Almost every one of those tunes I just mentioned didn't have a single thing like that to my ears, which, but I also respect the fact that there were a lot of people there. There were a number of people who had the best time that they've ever had at a Fish show and completely lost their minds, and that they've been chasing Scent of a Mule and that they love Numberline, and that you know, like that's their song with the friend they were standing next to for the first time. Like, and I'm like genuinely happy for them. Just speaking for me, it was just kind of one of those where I spent a lot of time sitting down on my bleacher. So yeah, reading all of my friends. Chris Glushko was in particular was enjoying my misery. So yeah, via text, he was being very antagonistic. So yes.
Well, and you know, he's a great reference here because you know, in conversations I've had with him, and I agree with everything you're saying essentially about like the idea of flow. And I think ultimately I've talked with you about this. I've talked with Chris Glushko about this. Like, for there to be these all-timer incredible Fish shows, there also has to be kind of a foundation, and there has to be like, this is the experience of a Fish show, which regardless the songs they play, which regardless how they connect, which regardless how they jam, what song comes next, whatever, that joy of being in that venue with 25, 30,000 other people, the band playing up on stage, is a net positive win. I think we can all agree upon that. And I think last night there were great moments. There were exciting, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. There were also a lot of like, I don't know why they're playing this song right now. Why did you choose this song right now? Why are we doing?
Why did you stop playing that last song? Just
right.
Yes,
And that to me, like that back and forth of like, I probably, aside from my, you know, daily respin of the, I watched the show and then I listened to it the next morning. I probably won't revisit this show in full ever again. And that's okay, because I agree with you. Overall, the band sounds really good. There are just certain nights where I'm wondering potentially if the tour and if life on the road is a lot and it gets them. And I think about Fish a lot in the same way I think about baseball. You could be the best baseball team in a year and you're still probably winning no more than 60% of your games. At the end of the day, like, there are World Series winners that win 84, 85, 86 games and have a really frustrating season. But there's a lot of joy in the highs and the lows. And I think that you get that with Fish. And last night we may not have seen the highest of highs or even the highs of Fish, if you will. We saw some frustrating moments. We saw some challenges. But I think overall, as you've pointed out, the tour has sounded really good thus far. The band sounds really good. And I'm curious, before we go here, do you have any shows lined up for you for the remainder of the tour? If so, what? And also, what are kind of you anticipating as the band continues on in this summer tour?
Very quickly, I didn't mention this before. The Soul Planet, really cool that, and this was Fishman driven, but they kept on alternating. Well, I think it went back and forth maybe like a total of like 4 times, that between like double time and halftime feel, which was like real. That's what when I said before, they packed a lot into that. That's absolutely worth a listen. And it gets like really dark at one point. Like, yeah, really. So I can totally see myself revisiting the No Man's, Soul Planet, which I've never said the words. I can totally see myself revisiting that Soul Planet before, and here we are. For me, tonight is the last night for me. I've also got a Boston Symphony concert lined up for Sunday up at Tanglewood with Leonidas Kavakos playing the Brahms Violin Concerto, which is going to be unbelievable. But yeah, my son starts school soon. It's just like back to like I'm putting the brakes on things, and I got to get back to my business, which has been neglected. And practicing, playing this thing more than like just like occasionally. So that's it for me for the tour. And what I see, I mean, I think it's an incredibly positive sign that they were. It was obvious that either the band was nervous, like you said, in Arkansas, right? Like something wasn't right, and it's part of it. Something wasn't wrong, but just something was just a little off, right?
Yes.
And yet they still, as you already pointed out, had some creative stuff that happened, like at the top of the second set, and I think especially earlier in 3.0, when something was off like that, there would not be the highlights. And that's why last night's show, which I think is not one of the strongest ones to be nice for this tour. Like it's in the bottom tier. But that first 30 minutes, would have been like one of the best 30-minute stretches of like all of like the summer 2009 tour. It would have been one of the best stretches for all of summer 2016 tour.
Yeah.
There's a few that are like if you had just dropped those in like the 13th show of
We're
the tour,
talking about it today, and
like,
we're like celebrating.
like screaming, even with the second set doing what it did afterwards. 100%. So I think everything is relative. And I think that the band has just been doing a lot of like the Character Zero in Nashville, just like just kind of reimagining stuff. And they're doing repeats, which I'm actually really happy about. Just because I would love it if they completely abandoned the if it was a computer program and I was programming it, I would like abandon the song count like thing, because I really love seeing them play the crap out of their songs. And when you look up in like say 1994, how many times Fish played Split Open and Melt, like Prepare if you've never done that before. It's like they played Bowie in 94, like it's like 40 times or something in one year. It's like, of course it's better than now when they play it like, like once or twice a tour, But I think that creatively, I think that there's going to be some more like breathtaking stuff. It's interesting. I've now seen them play 6 sets this summer. And in terms of just like re-listen value, one set is really like, is there right out of the 6 that I've seen. And yet I still think there's a very strong possibility that they're going to do something tonight that just like has my jaw, on the risers of the stands, looking over that dump of a venue. Which was completely overrun. Bathrooms were overrun. The will call line was like still going like 40 minutes into the show. I mean, it's like, it was like the first time they had ever hosted a concert there before. It was pretty funny. It's a charming dump, but it's a dump. But I just think
once, and it's an amazing dump. I enjoyed that venue, but I agree. Like I was like, I'm not even getting a drink here. I'm coming in. I'm gonna take in just like the college level type of bleachers and just, watch Fish in a stadium. And that's the joy of it.
Yeah. It was fun.
It's interesting. Like you say, the re-listen value. And for me, like I would add Deer Creek Night 1 and I don't think you were there. So I think you're talking just the sets that you saw live, but Deer Creek Night 1, I think is one of those shows you press play on and you don't let up. I was thinking about it last night, to me, this tour has felt the most similar to fall 2013 and summer 2015. And those to me are the 2 best tours of the 3.0 era. And if you go through those tours, specifically summer 2015, rattling off some dates, 728, 729, 82, 88, 814, 816. Those are shows that generally speaking are not well regarded. And there's a handful of shows there that scattered throughout the tour. Immediately afterwards, during the tour, people were like, I don't really think that the band has it tonight. There was that one moment, but aside from that, I didn't really like the set list. I didn't really like the jamming. And I saw a few of those shows. Now, the thing that made that tour really elevate was 731, 84, 89, 812, 815, Magna Ball. These moments where like the band was fully connected. And, to me, if you look ahead at this tour, we don't know what's going to happen. We could see a ton of Hershey Night 1s for the remainder of the time where there's a lot of uneven up and down play. We could also see 3 or 4 more shows that sound like Nashville Night 2, that sound like Deer Creek Night 1, Alpharetta Night 2. That unknown is obviously exciting. We can't predict anything, but I would argue that the band that played Deer Creek Night 1 is still there. And they simply can't do that every night. There's no tour where they do that every night, even fall 1997.
And it is possible for bands to do that every night. Like bands like AC/DC, they play the same show I saw them at the Worcester Centrum in 1991, and it was amazing. And I guarantee you every show was amazing because they plan what they're going to do. And there's there's choreography, and they're going to stand here, and then I'm going to jump here. And when I land is when on the downbeat when all of the explosions go off, and it's like, and it was incredible. It was an amazing rock concert, really great musician, but like Fish is an improvisational rock group, and they take chances all of the time, and like there's never been any point in their history where everything they attempted was great. I mean, there's like December 95, which is like which we've talked for hours about before. There are some nights that just don't get to the level of the other nights. And so it's like, that's what it is. Right. I mean, I'm friends with Anna Sortun, who's a James Beard Award winning chef in Boston. She was the best chef in the Northeast for like she's amazing. She's world renowned. If I asked her about all of the dishes, she has founded 3 restaurants. If I asked her about all the dishes she's ever created, if she thought that they were all equally great, she would laugh in my face. Like, of course they're not. Like, no, of course they're. And was she proud enough to put them all on a menu? Then yes, which means that they were all good. I guarantee it. But there are some that, like, if customers remove, there's been just a couple that she's had at Oleana that she's had for years, and if she were to remove them permanently, like, there'd be a number of people who would be like, I'm sorry, what? And then there are others that are really good, and then they come and they go. And that's what the difference between being a cook and a chef, right? AC/DC live, they're being cooks. They're like, they know that they need 2 orders of smothered, covered, diced, and they're really good at making that breakfast. And Anna is a chef, and she takes ingredients, and then her brain starts going wild. And that's what Fish does with music. Sometimes it comes together, sometimes it doesn't come together. And even when you're Fish or Anna Sortun, it's still going to be great, but it's like not going to be like, yeah, of course she won the James Beard Award for best chef in the entire Northeast for like across all cuisines, because look at this dish, versus like, oh yeah, that's really good. And So, and that's where Fish is at. But right now I think that they're in a really good position to make a great run for the rest of this tour.
Yeah, I agree that the risk-taking element is the thing that will always draw me back to Fish, and the fact that like failure is always an option, and failure is, to me, a good thing in music. And like I think it's what makes a night like last night actually interesting. Is I think the band tried to do something that's not totally to their strength, which is be a straight ahead rock band. And when they do that, they don't fully sound like themselves. They do sound like a solid rock band. And I would gladly pay, money to go see a show like that. And to see Fish live is fantastic. No matter what they play, we said this earlier, it's a joyful experience, but that element of risk and that element of like, can failure happen right now? Can we play this jam? We have no idea where it's going to go. Is it going to lead someplace strong? You think about like the Simple from Deer Creek. They could have 5 minutes in been like, wow, we're getting into some really weird, like wacky noise territory. I don't know if we're feeling this or if the crowd is feeling this. What made that jam so great was that they kind of tapped in their subconscious and just pushed it as far as possible.
They went all in
there. Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Seth Godin calls it tension, where tension meaning that you don't know whether something's going to work or something isn't going to work. And that's where all growth comes from. And that's where all excitement comes from. When you decide, when RJ and all you knuckleheads were like, let's create a podcast network, it's like there was a good chance it was going to fail. There was also a good chance it was going to succeed. That's the exciting thing, right? Because if it was easy, everybody'd do it, right? If it was easy to be Fish, everybody would be Fish. And that's where because when it hits, my God, get out of the way. So which I hope happens tonight.
Well, but before you revoke comparing Osiris Media to Fish, I think that is a great ending point, and I'm gonna end us on that high. So thank you so much for that, Drew. Before we go, really quickly, this is your last night at tour. I think we're both in the same mindset of we try to leave our expectations at the door, but it's kind of hard sometimes to not carry them in with us. Is there a song? Is there a type of music? Like what are you hoping to hear tonight? If you could get anything from the band, and as someone who has had his ear to the band on certain moments, what would you love to hear tonight?
Tweezer. That's always my answer. Is always Tweezer. So yeah, because I just
time
think
is
that
ripe for it.
yeah, it would. Although I am worried that they're going to save it for AC, but yeah, that would like for sure be my answer, just because I think that that's the band's. I think that's by far the best blank canvas creatively for the band. It just like who knows where the hell that could go. And I would love to see an Alumni Blues, which I have been chasing for 28 years. But yeah, but that's probably slash positively not happening. So I will go with Tweezer.
You've never seen Alumni Blues?
I've never seen Alumni Blues. Nope.
Wow.
Yep. Yep.
I'm really hoping that you get that tonight. I got one at the Baker's Dozen, which, the Baker's Dozen was everyone's going to get everything there. So, but
and I was seeing the last 5 shows of the Baker's Dozen, and they played it like 2 shows before that. I was like, there's a really good chance if it just lasts for like 2 more shows that I'm going to get it. Of course, it didn't happen because that's just like that is not in the universe's plans. So,
well,
but I have. Go ahead.
My white whale remains Albuquerque, which is the cover that I'm hoping every jam as it kind of fades out we'll get that
Right.
That like just like soulful end of the road Neil Young mid 1970s. I need that in me. So
there you go.
I'm hoping you get an Alumni Blues tonight and that they don't play Albuquerque and they save that for Dick's.
There you go. I will try and will it to be, although I don't know how much my willing thinks is going to work. According to last night, I was trying to right the ship, and I was like, no, the train went all the way over. So, yeah,
righting the ship is what brought us Soul Planet. I mean, I feel it was the pirate ship of 2017. So I think we need a different boat here. Well, Drew, it is always a pleasure to talk with you, man. You got such great thoughts on Fish, and I love going deep. And I'm glad in some cases that we were able to go deep on a frustrating, challenging show rather than just say, "Oh, the Tweezer was amazing."
Yeah. I enjoyed talking about the good, the bad, and that's meaning like what spoke to me, what didn't speak to me. I think it's all worthy. And for the record, for people who hate anybody who criticizes anything Fish does, as a musician, if you were to listen to everything that I have ever put out, live or otherwise, and said that you liked all of it equally well, it all spoke to you exactly the same amount, that to me means that you're not really listening, because there's no chance that that everything I've ever done, it's like a broad, there's just no chance of that happening. So I promise you that musicians are fine with like you saying that not everything is your favorite, at least this one, and pretty much 98% of all musicians I've ever met. So anyway, just to get that on the record.
No, I feel that in the immortal words of Chris Glushko, if you say that this was the best version, you've immediately been critical about every other version. So I think that
he's such a deep thinker.
It's amazing thoughts. Well, Drew, I hope that you have an awesome show tonight. Safe travels getting home, and I'm hoping that we can catch a show here in the future. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much for hanging with us, dude. Have a great time tonight.
Yeah, of course. All right, bye.
All right. Thank you everyone for hanging with us here on our elongated episode. That was a big one. We broke down a very, I would say, interesting Fish show last night. I think there were really interesting moments, but I want to thank Nick Cantrell, our first guest from Green Future Wealth Management. Like I said, we run a bunch of ads for Green Future Wealth Management across the Osiris Media platform. Check them out. They do really fantastic work. And thank you as always to Drew Hitz at Drew Fish, one of my favorite follows on Twitter, one of my favorite people to talk about Fish with. Before I go, just want to remind everyone here, HFPod on Tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Go to shiftcannabis.com between now and the Saturday of Dick's to register for tickets to October 30th and 31st in Las Vegas, as well as some money towards airfare and hotel. Shift Genuine Cannabis is a fantastic partner here for us. We are so grateful to be aligned with them and for them to bring back HF Pod on Tour. I also want to give a huge shout out. I meant to do this at the start of the show, but to Jambase, which is our media partner. They do fantastic recaps of Fish shows as well as a ton of other incredible content about the larger, wider jam band world. So thank you so much to Jambase for your partnership and for your support. And thank you to all of our listeners. This was a ton of fun to go deep with Nick and Drew about last night's show. We'll be back tomorrow with 2 more guests, 1 p.m. Eastern, to break down night 2 of Nashville. Should be interesting. Maybe we'll see the yin and the yang of things that we saw with Nashville last week. Who knows? It's the fun part about this. We have no idea what's to come. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there. Be good to each other. We'll talk here soon.